Well, I come up with another interesting topic for a series of videos. The M16 rifle and its place in U.S. military small arms history. Okay? I did a video about an AR15 rifle I was working on, and I kind of made some negative comments about it. They adopted it, it's terrible to clean compared to other guns and blah, blah, blah. My core subscribers are my age or a little bit older than me. And I can tell from some of their comments, without them venting too bad, that I kind of struck a nerve for any of us that remember the 60s, 70s, the Vietnam War, how the M16 rifle was in the middle of all this controversy, and it was a pretty different point in U.S. history, the 60s and 70s, and during that conflict, war, whatever you wish to call it. And there's a lot of controversy and politicians involved and all kinds of stuff. And so when I was thinking on that, I said I'd like to talk about the AR15 platform because it's one of the most popular civilian used platforms now. It's a very popular gun in this country, along with just about any other ex-military rifle. At one point in time, they're popular, and a lot of them still are. Okay? So I wanted to discuss that, but then when I started thinking about it in detail, and a lot of the different military weapons that I talk about, the history of them, their development and everything, it's all come down. I realize that things really don't change over time. Okay, the way the civilian populace reacts to having a black rifle like this, okay, that's still the same. It was like it 40 years ago, and I'll explain that. Also, the reasons why we adopt new rifles, there's politics involved, the situation of the world. A lot of these guns were pushed into service because of war or pending war or for national security reasons. In other words, you have to keep your military updated so it doesn't fall behind in technology and effectiveness. And then, like I said, there's the political end of it all. And it's kind of a similar story throughout history, not only in the U.S. but other nations, and a lot of these old military guns that I collect and talk about. So I was trying to figure out how to tell this story, but you have to kind of go back in time and see the parallelism between our past service rifles and how we kind of got up to where the point in time where the M16 was adopted. And there's a lot of factors. The mission of the military, the global political situation, okay, but with not only inside our government but with foreign powers, and how it all kind of interacts with this. And then the thing is, like I stated, you want to be technologically more advanced than your adversaries. Because like the old saying, a strong defense is a good offense. You want to keep up and be superior to anyone who would try to challenge you or you would have a problem with. So that's basically what it all boils down to. But like I said, the story, much like the 1911, all the wild tales and that, they're all connected in to the M16 platform and the adoption of it, or the AR-15 rifle, and how it come about. And there's a lot of real famous political people tied in this story and how it all goes, and there's a lot of myths and wild rumors about that gun and different stories about how it was inadequate and actually cost the lives of our servicemen, okay? Well, if you go back far enough, I can find a parallel story that ties in to the AR-15 platform, okay? It goes back pretty far, but the guns I'm going to talk about in detail, we have the M1 Garand, okay? And how this fits in, both back then and, like I said recently, a few years ago, however. The M1 carbine, okay? This has some ties to this. And as we progress not only in development, we get to the M14, okay? And this kind of is tied in close to the M16 because this is what the Army adopted, and for certain reasons they halted production of this rifle, which was adopted by the U.S. Army by more or less the demands of the politicians and the policymakers in Washington. They said, stop making them, you're going to make this weapon, and you're going to issue it to our troops. Okay? And that was done by political people, not the military. And there's another twist to it too when I get into the story of how the military kind of done it. So what I'm going to do is make a series and cover each gun progressively, both in terms of history on its way up to get to the story there. That way you see the whole picture. And I'm also going to tie in the similarities from both in the past to the present now, okay? And it's quite interesting when you hear me out and see how I kind of tie it all in together. And we'll go, and there's a couple guns I'll talk about, we'll go way back, okay? And I'll explain what I mean by what the public thinks and other things. See, in America we have freedom of speech, and we have a democratically elected government. So when the politicians complain about a policy, be it economic or in terms of defense of the country, okay, this is important things. And when they go and get in the old days, it was the newspaper. So we're going to roll back the clock to the big arms race back in the 1890s. Because in the late 1880s, that's when the French developed smokeless powder. Now, most countries had some form of a cartridge firing gun, firing about a 41 to 45 caliber bullet with a metallic case loaded with black powder. Okay, that was top of the line then. Well, when the French got smokeless powder, that started a craze, because now they had a small bore rifle that was more efficient, more effective, had a greater range, and this started an arms race, okay, back in the late 1800s, which is why there's so many different guns were changed, adopted, modified over a short period of time, because technology was advancing rapidly. And the residue of this stuff is what we collect. Okay, all these different types of guns and that. Alright, so what happened was the U.S. had the trapdoor single-shot rifle, which we developed, was our own design. Really nothing controversial about it. Okay, that was our standard military issue. So what we did is we ran, like every country does, a weapons trial. We get a sample of everything out there from all different countries. And during this, I guess to just pick it up, the Krag-Jorgensen rifle system, the U.S. government liked, and somehow it adopted it. I don't know if they had to pay a license or something, and they were manufactured at the Springfield Armory. Okay, Krag rifles, they're super high quality, they're great guns. You know, there's some videos of me shooting them, smooth action, had a side opening magazine that you just drop 5 cartridges in and slam it shut and you fired 5 rounds. Really, there was no technical issues with it. They tried getting a cartridge a little bit more power and ended up cracking bolts when they were developing ammo. So they come to the realization that the gun was not, it was kind of obsolete right out of the box. Okay, good gun, great gun to hunt with when you know, they're long, but when you get the carbines or you get one that's short, and a lot of them were like that, they're an outstanding hunting gun. They work fine. The only thing is the cartridge is not that powerful, and kind of as technology and stuff advanced, something like this, even though it worked well, became kind of obsolete quick. The other thing was, the controversy was, the politicians didn't like the idea that we adopted a foreign designed weapon. You know, we're America, we should be able to design our own weapon. And so this was kind of a controversy, though a small one, behind the gun. Also really didn't see service because during the Spanish-American War they didn't produce enough of them to issue them to everybody when they invaded Cuba. Okay, so the only Krags that were out there, I think Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders commandeered some for themselves, but most men during that campaign were issued a 45-70 black powder rifle, and that's where we found out that smokeless powder rifles and the Mauser style rifles, you know, did damage to us, and we realized that we had to get, you know, innovation in there and that. I believe the Krags were used during the Philippine insurrection because we kind of fought battles there after the end of the Spanish-American War in the Philippine Islands, and that's where it's seen its use. So historically, once Mauser and his series of guns designed the model 1898, that was a winner. There was really kind of no improvement on bolt-action rifles after that. That gun was the most copied, issued, used bolt-action rifle, and for many years was a standard of 5-shot bolt-action rifle. So much so that when the U.S. government decided to develop the 1903 Springfield bolt-action rifle, which we developed here in our country and produced it, again, another great gun. You know, popular in the 30-06 caliber. It was after out of service, you know, when they were sold as surplus. They're all converted into hunting guns. They're great guns. They were popular guns with the public. People wanted them. People liked them. People liked the 30-06 caliber. It's one of the most popular hunting rounds in the U.S. even today, I believe, or it was at one time. 40 years ago it was. Everybody made a 30-06 rifle. Everybody shot it. Everybody hunted with it. The only thing that we ran into a problem is it was such a close copy of the Mauser 1898, which the design is based on, and it used the 5-round stripper clip that went through the little bridge area on top of the receiver. We got sued by Mauser and had to pay money. So that was the controversy behind the 03 design. Technical wise, and that what happened, and anyone who collects old Springfields know the high serial number, low serial number. At one point in time, in the early production stages, they screwed up when they heat treated the receivers. And they made some bad quality guns on a technical mistake. And that's why anyone who really collects the old Springfields knows what I'm talking about. High number, low number receiver serial numbers. There were some bad guns made. That's just the way it is. Okay, and it kind of ties in with everything. There's never a smooth transition in the adoption of a new weapon. There's always some kind of technical glitch or something. And that was the Springfields. So as we progressed on through the different wars, and the Springfield .30-06 bolt-action rifle was used all the way up into the 70s in the Vietnam War in the sniper rifle version. So that gun serviced on for quite a long time, even though it was not the frontline official rifle. We still used them for all those years. So they're a good gun. But if you look at it, there was technical glitches and a little bit of controversy in its adoption. So you see it kind of ties in. In between the wars, that's when we started realizing, and that was another strange time. After World War I, they realized that a bolt-action rifle and the way war was changing, again, technology, this and that, you needed a rapid-fire, close-range weapon. All right, and we tried adopting the Springfield 30-06 with the Penderson device, where they put like a pistol clip and a little adapter in there to make it into a semi-automatic gun. So this idea was an old idea, okay? The Thompson submachine guns, some of them did make it over there towards the end of the war, but it was too little too late, okay? So now submachine guns became a weapon that was developed during World War I, a need for this, which they didn't exist before. So now you get into the 20s, things settle down, and the Army and that kind of was downsized again. And then when the Depression came, things were bad. The United States Army, I think in 1935, was the 10th largest army in the world. It was small. Congress even was kicking the idea around of disbanding the U.S. Army. Okay, they said the Marine Corps and the Navy is all we needed to protect our coast from invasion. It got that bad. But fortunately, some people in the military knew war was going to come again. Okay, and with even more advances in technology, you're going to have to be up there. So that's when they decided they were going to design a semi-automatic rifle, okay? And what happened was, and I'll cover this in its own video, they came up with the M1 Garand, okay? And this gun served us well, and it has its own story. So also, another strange thing that they did, which when I tied in with the story with the Garand, is they wanted it in the service rifle round. But also in the 30s, they developed the M1 carbine, okay? And this is totally different. Short, lightweight, uses what they call sub-caliber munitions, 30 carbine round, had a detachable 15-round magazine, semi-automatic gun, all right? So we developed this. Along we had submachine guns in service and that. What the M1 carbine was designed for is it was to replace the .45 automatic pistol, or pistols in general, okay? The whole concept was a man that was, let's say on a mortar crew or a truck driver or something, was usually issued a pistol. Well, the idea was to give them something a little bit better, and this was it. And we'll go over that and how it ties in. Also, this weapon, and there's some things about it, the government treated it strangely, and I'll cover that in the video. And this weapon was also used in a mass shooting that was kind of famous at one point in time. That's where it kind of ties into the AR-15. Now, after World War II, and see, World War II, this is where we start developing, like I said, they looked at the Sten gun. They looked at something, they wanted something that was cheap to produce, simplified in its mechanism, okay, and I'll cover that, features of how complicated each and every one of these guns were, but still was a semi-automatic gun, or now selective fire, and again the carbine was one that kind of got them into everything had to be selective fire. And so they were developing this new gun. Again, after World War II, there were more advances in technology. Things changed to where they could modify it and get the size of the gun down to where we came up with the M14, okay? And this used a smaller cartridge, but still 30 caliber, still fired the same bullet as the M1 Garand, but now we have a detachable box magazine, semi-automatic, and the military versions were selective fire, okay? They came up with the concept, even though this is not a simple mass production gun or a simplified version. It is a simplified version of the Garand. That they did do. But the concept was that this weapon would replace the M1 Garand, the M1 carbine, the BAR, and the submachine gun. They had the concept, we're going to get rid of all these other different little guns we're using and just have one general purpose rifle that covered and did the work of all these weapons, which that did not work out. Okay. And where this is kind of really directed to the AR-15 is while they were testing this gun, there was the AR-10. The AR-10 and the AR-15 were guns designed by Eugene Stoner, okay? And they were in this weapons trial in the 50s when they were trying to develop a new gun. And that's where the story goes, where these two are tied together close, and then we ended up where we come down our story of how the AR-15, which really was rejected by the Army and the military and in general, but then certain units, and then the CIA gets involved in smuggling some of these to this really nice place we were involved in, kind of covertly, called Vietnam, and then the story gets all crazy, twisted. There's politics, all kinds of strange things, almost like a conspiracy theory, but it's true. So that's how I'm going to kind of tie it all in, because all of these guns are connected in one way or the other, okay? And you see we're going down a profile of the same thing where anything the U.S. Army has or had used becomes a pretty popular civilian gun. You know, back in the old days, like the Krags, they were all converted and sporterized into hunting rifles, and they were quite popular for a long time, okay? Much like the Springfield 30-06s, okay, because they're not automatic weapons and underneath the laws. A lot of these guns were taken, reworked, redone, and turned into some high-quality sporting weapons, okay? And the cartridges were popular, okay? The 30-40 Krag was used to be called the 30 Government, and there was a lot of civilian-produced weapons in that caliber. Same with the 30-06 is a mainstay today in the U.S. And, you know, if you want to go to 308 Winchester or the 7.62 by 51 NATO designation, okay? That's a sniper round, it's a machine gun round, it's also a damn good round in a bolt-action rifle, general all-purpose hunting cartridge, okay? So you see the parallelism where I say how it ties into the civilian view of the gun. So that's my general consensus on how all this is going to go in, and I gave you a general idea of the older weapons, the Krag and the Springfield. You know that they had their contra, they had their points, and everything else. Had a little bit of an interruption there, so I'm going to have an edit. So this might have broke my train of thought, but like I said, I'm showing how they're all tied in, and really, over time, it doesn't change. It's just a lot of us still around remember this gun, okay, in the Vietnam War in the 60s more than anything. And but the story's the same throughout history, and that's how it goes. So now I'm going to go and I'll make a little video on each of these and how it ties into the M16 story, and we get a view of it all.